Hi, everybody. Welcome to Happy Hour Hoops today. Just wanted to start the episode off saying thoughts and prayers for the victims of our tragic shooting in Buffalo this weekend on Saturday. Senseless, racist actions should never be the norm in our country. And it's a shame that a tragedy has affected any community, let alone our own. So, again, thoughts and prayers with the families. Look up resources on GoFundMe to help donate to those that are in need right now. Be kind to those in your community, love each other more. We're all we got. So that's where it starts, with you and within your community. Again, thoughts and prayers to those who lost their lives and anybody affected by the tragedies this weekend. Hopefully we can give you a little bit of an upbeat, better show here with some conference finals talk, exciting NBA weekend, exciting times coming up. Got Donovan Holden, some guy named Steve, and our friend Amari McPherson joining for his second time. Hope you enjoy the show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Triple H podcast. As Jake mentioned off the rip, we have two reoccurring guests now, Amari McPherson and longtime guest, some guy named Steve. What's up, gentlemen? How we doing?
We're doing well. I'm doing
I
well.
was gonna say, I'm not doing as good as you guys. I mean, the Cavs aren't in the playoffs, so what can I do?
Me and Amari are not as happy as these two
Yeah.
on the other side here.
Yeah, so let's get it. We got a bunch of playoffs to get into. Two crazy game sevens yesterday. I do want to start with, we have the game sevens to get to, like I just said, and we will touch on and kind of preview the conference finals. Can't believe we're already here, by the way. Conference finals season's crazy. Feel like the offs just started. But I do want to start with this because we don't really have much for news and notes, but as you guys know, everyone knows the Phoenix Suns got bounced from the playoffs yesterday, and that's putting it lightly. They got stomped on their home court by the Dallas Mavericks. It was up to 40 plus at one point. Just an embarrassing loss on your home court. And then to make matters worse, Pat Bev was on ESPN all day today, just trashing Chris Paul, going wild. Sticking to it on social media afterwards. Dame Lillard's tweeting at him. I just kind of want to go around the horn here because this was the craziest news, outside of teams that are still involved today in the NBA world. So just quick go around here. I guess we could start with Stevie, then go to Amari, then Jake. What's your guys' thoughts on all this Pat Bev nonsense?
I mean, I think it fits his character perfectly, right? Pat Bev, this is a guy who likes to get on their players' skins. He's an instigator, and he took a golden opportunity to just take a dump on a player he doesn't like with Chris Paul. He's been very open about not liking it. I love that he went on the show today with Stephen A, and he's talking about how Chris Paul, he's a terrible defender. He's one of the worst defenders in the league. Everyone talks about it, and Stephen A's like, I haven't heard this. He's like, when are people talking about this? I'm missing this. And Pat Bev, he basically took a victory lap. He took a victory lap in like the Suns' downfall. And that's just kind of the player he is. If it was a different player, maybe I would have been a little surprised. But when I saw it was Pat Bev in the news, Pat Bev on every show, Pat Bev just talking as much crap as he can about Chris Paul, I'm not too shocked, to be honest with you. It's just who he is.
Yeah, Patrick Beverly. I mean, everybody knows he's the heel of the NBA. So I couldn't imagine being trounced in the playoffs in a game 7 and my arch enemy going on national television less than 12 hours later to take a victory lap. But everybody, this is what Patrick Beverly is. This is who he is. Everybody knows it. Me personally, I was catching up on it a little bit later. To me, it's entertaining, to be honest. People are going to listen. People are going to watch. People are going to talk about it. And it was a little bit refreshing to kind of get away from the normal circles that you see about on ESPN. And to Steve's point, Patrick Beverly, he was talking a little kind of reckless, and JJ Redick was kind of calling him out on it earlier on first day. Like the same thing that you kind of excuse your teammate and James Harden for, you talk about, Chris Paul, you get on him. So what's the difference? But and also saw Matt Barnes was he kind of clapped back a little bit at him as well. I saw that clip earlier, and so people, they either you love it or you hate it, and obviously we've seen NBA players, former and current, kind of not really take too kindly to it, understandably so. But for everybody else, I think it was pretty entertaining. So I don't really have a problem with it.
He was, bro. They call it ESPN the car wash when there's a guest that comes through and does all the shows. He literally got the car wash. They were showing clips and it was him on Get Up, and then he was out there on First Takes on More Nonsense. He's like, wait, more. I got more for Nude Sports Center. I saved these ones just for you guys. Like, he was like calculated. Like, I'm gonna get something off in every single one of these shows. So like you said, I'm proud of, like, he was a smart, like, he's a smart man. He had this calculated, coming out hating the day after Chris Paul goes out. I mean, if he was always in the plans to be on ESPN for this Monday following these Game 7s, what a day for him to luck out to be scheduled for today, right? Like, he had to have woken up this morning and just like the cheery, like whatever cheery montage you see from a TV show when someone's like super excited to go to work, that was Pat Bev like shining his shoes to get ready to go for the more everything. Like, he was probably whistling walking in, like just so happy that today was the one day he got to go into ESPN and spout his nonsense. It was great theater. Just wild actions that you could only expect from Patrick Beverley, though.
I think there was a tweet that said like Pat Bev woke up at 4:30 in the morning waiting at the ESPN studio with like a smile on his face. Like, he was just ready. He was looking forward to it. That's what Pat Bev is. He was just so excited to take a dump on Chris Paul, who he can't stand. And that's what he did on national TV for hours.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Like, I think I lean that it was definitely disrespectful, but when we're talking about Pat Bev, I don't really know kind of what you guys already touched on, what everyone else was expecting.
Right.
You know, I don't know if people thought he was going to have this much ammo or if he was going to be on ESPN for this long, but like we said, literally on all day, went through every show.
Long, bro.
He kept the victory lap going. It was about like 12 victory laps by the time he was done with it.
This is and mind you, this is his second occurrence. Like, this is more extreme than the tweet last week. But we had him last week talking about locking up Ja, right? Yeah, that didn't happen in our series after they lost. Like, he's just been talking crazy since they won, you know, their play-in game and got to the first round. Like, it's just bold actions by a bold man. That's all I have to say.
He's just been picking on point guards who have made it further and further than he has in this year's playoffs. Like, is he's about to come after Steph next, like after they make the finals or if they make the finals. But yeah, wild. I liked Matt Barnes clapping back too. You know, I think he said the right things. The only thing that I disagreed with that Matt Barnes said was, you know, he kind of then started talking about, you know, the reporting lifestyle and being an analyst. Like, I don't think Pat Bev has ever been or claimed to be an analyst. I think he got a shot to go on First Take. And like you guys said, he made it entertaining for the shows on a Monday on ESPN. So, you know, I'm fine with Matt Barnes straight up and kind of Dame Lillard was the same criticism. Like, you're not that guy, Pat Bev. You're not a top 10 point guard in the NBA right now, you know, let alone top 5, these other guys that you're coming at. So I understand that. I think it's fine that people clap back, but at the same time, like, Pat Bev is going to say what he's going to say. And, you know, Chris Paul, I guess you can be better next year if you don't want to hear it.
Yeah. All right, so we got to get into the Game 7s then, because there's a Chris Paul.
There's
a whole Chris Paul thing that is gonna have to get discussed along here at some point, unfortunately. But yeah, Dunny, you're the only one in one of these 4 boxes that attended a Game 7 yesterday. Unless Amari, I don't know. I don't think you were in Phoenix or Boston yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think so. I was in Boston 2 weeks ago, but I didn't make it for Game 7. So
not for Game 7. All right, so Dunny was the only one attending a Game 7. So that atmosphere at the Garden just looked insane. So just give us a little taste of what it was like there.
Yeah, man. Second, you know, I met a friend in Malden, which is kind of outside of the city. And then we took the T in, and as soon as I got off the T, like the sidewalks outside the Garden were just packed. I don't know. I mean, if you guys saw it on my Twitter, I put a video up, but there was a dude playing like an electric guitar that was shaped like a keyboard, and he had a teddy bear like head on him. And so there's just like a teddy bear in the middle of the street ripping music. Like, everyone was hyped. And this was like 2 hours before the game. You know, and then me and my friend Brett went in an hour early. It was already loaded. Everyone was in there watching Smart warm up. Neesmith and Smart were out there early. Giannis came out like 40 minutes before the game. At one point, the whole crowd booed him. Like it just from the start, it was insane. Easily my favorite Celtics game that I've been to, and I've been to, some pretty iconic games in the Garden. Nothing like a Game 7 with that energy, and then just the way the game unfolded was insanity. I mean, the Celtics started pretty slow. It was kind of stale from both teams at first. Giannis scored or assisted on the Bucks' first 24 points. I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. And then the Celtics just got red hot. It probably wasn't, you guys weren't able to tell on TV, but like after the Grayson Allen air ball and like anytime the Bucks got an offensive foul, like you literally couldn't even hear yourself think in the Garden. Like the sounds are so loud, you were literally vibrating at some points. Truly like one in a lifetime experience. And then of course you had the Grant Williams game. Everyone just going nuts for Grant. I got this. My towel collection is getting pretty crazy, man.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's
JB.
awesome.
The energy's about to shift. His famous quote from this January before the energy shifted and the Celtics turned into this championship caliber team. So yeah, I mean, we can get into the game itself and kind of talk about both sides here, but I had a blast. It was just spectacular to be a part of. Celtics are, they have a sign up in the TD Garden. It says 1 million fans, 17 players, and one family. And it certainly felt like that yesterday. And that's why I sound like this right now. I have little to no voice.
I'm just so glad you got to go and experience something like that. Like as any kind of experience like that for your team is just, it's unbeatable. I've mentioned I was at the Game 6, just the watch party for the Cavs the year they won the title. Game 6. That was the most insane experience of my life. People yelling "fuck Steph Curry" on 4th Street in Cleveland, just taking up the middle of the road after the game. Like it was an incredible experience. And that wasn't even a win, or was a win, but not a Game 7 win to move on or anything else. So yeah, Amar, I'm gonna pass it to you in a second because Donnie, you touched on a lot of things. There's not a lot for me to get to in this game other than it was the fucking Grant Williams game, which I never expected in my life that Game 7 Grant Williams would be a thing. I almost put him in our promo post earlier just as like the joke that he should get in there over Tatum because he was really the guy yesterday, man. Like even Tatum even said in his post game press availability, he's like, I told Grant this is the only game he's ever allowed to shoot more shots than I am. It's true. Like that's facts. Like that should never ever happen again. But somehow yesterday the Grant Williams games worked out. Was it just destiny, Amari? Did it just feel like, what was your read? I guess we didn't get to talk to you at all during these playoffs. What was your read going into Game 7? Were you shocked? Is that kind of what you thought was going to happen there?
I was shocked at the way it happened. I wasn't shocked necessarily at the result, especially since the Celtics had home court advantage, obviously. I really couldn't tell who was going to win. I mean, it was kind of back and forth, but seeing how the Celtics had won their previous elimination game, they had the momentum, especially with Chris Middleton being out. He really wasn't going to come back at all. So, but no, for Grant Williams to have that kind of game, I was definitely surprised. And I saw that Jason Tatum said, don't get used to it. So, I mean, this is definitely, one of those once-in-a-lifetime games for Grant Williams. But, it was a hell of a game to watch. It was very entertaining. I even tweeted it watching Game 6, I believe. I said, I don't really have like a dog in this race, but a Giannis and Jason Tatum Game 7 will be very entertaining to watch. And it turned out to be, even though the box score at the end of the game wasn't really all that close, but no, it wasn't surprising at all. Like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight, so happy for the Celtics. I mean, I hate to say it, this may be getting ahead of myself, but I'm going for the Heat in the next round, but I got the Heat, so
okay.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, besides Grant Williams, I think you have to talk about the Bucks' stubbornness on defense. All year long, they have been letting teams shoot on them. They've been letting the poorer shooters shoot threes and take open looks. And Grant Williams isn't a bad three-point shooter. He's about 40% on the year, and the Bucks are just like, we're just going to leave you alone. And props to Grant Williams and props to the Celtics too, because he didn't start off. I think he was 1 of 5 to start off the night.
Losing my mind.
He was bad, and these were fouling too and everything. Like these
fouls. Were great looks. These were wide open looks, and I was like, this is going to go one or two ways. Exactly. He's either going to get hesitant, not want to shoot, and the Bucks defense is kind of work, or he's going to keep shooting. And I think props to the Celtics and everything for them for letting Grant Williams continue to shoot, and Grant Williams to have the confidence to keep shooting, because eventually these are going to fall in, and they started falling for the Celtics. And on the other end of the court, they didn't fall in for the Bucks. I mean, when you go 4 of 33 from 3, I know, Dunny, you were hating on Giannis all playoffs long, and I get it. You're in a series against him. He's the best player in the world. You're gonna hate the guy. But I mean, Giannis, he had probably the heaviest backpack on of anyone in this playoffs, and yesterday was no exception. Yesterday was no exception. I think it was Wes Matthews, Holiday, Connaughton, and Grayson Allen combined 0 of 18 from 3 yesterday, which you can't do that with Giannis. He was doing everything. He almost had a triple-double in the first quarter. But it's the Celtics are this team type of basketball that I love to see. And I really have to give a shout out to Jason Tatum of kind of how he opened my eyes. I think the big reason why people didn't want to put him on the level of a superstar is of these other big superstars is because they felt he was just a scorer. And that comes into part of not watching all the Celtics games. But over the course of just this year, you have seen how much he kind of runs the offense. And he made some passes. He had some reads yesterday that were incredible. And even when he got his 4th foul, which should have been an and one, wasn't a foul. I can't believe they even reviewed that for a flagrant. But Tatum before that was the reason the Celtics were able to get so many of these open looks, because the Bucks defense had to focus on him. And if you want to be one of these superstars, if you want to be the guys in the conversations with LeBron, with KD, you have to be able to beat teams in multiple ways. Jason Tatum is able to do that. He was able to draw the doubles. He was able to kick it out. I have to give Tatum all the credit in the world, and I have to give the Celtics coaching staff. They drew up a perfect game plan on both sides of the court, and they didn't shy away from it when it wasn't looking good at the start. The Bucks were up 10 early in the first. They could have taken away from saying, "All right, we're not going to let Grant Williams shoot anymore. We're going to do what we can with Tatum, maybe in double teams, or try to get Jaylen Brown involved." And instead they were like, you know what, we're sticking to our game plan, and it worked. And you saw they just kind of pulled away because the Bucks were stubborn and the Celtics weren't.
So Stevie, I think
I want to piggyback.
Go ahead, Amari.
I'm going to piggyback really quickly off of Steve's point about the coaching staff. I want to give a shout out to Ime Udoka, especially because Celtics got off to such a slow start at the beginning of the year, and I really didn't know how they were going to look, especially with a brand new coaching staff. But I mean, everybody knows since the beginning of the year they really turned things around, and he's gotten Jason Tatum to buy in defensively. He's one of the best defensive and really best two-way players, because we know how great he is offensively, and he's definitely been the leader of this series and a leader of this team, and a main reason, other than Grant Williams, obviously, for why they're in the position that they're in right now. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Ime Udoka, because I feel like not a lot of people are talking about that. He probably, in my book, should have gotten Coach of the Year for the performance that he's done this year. Mm-hmm. But so, like I said, I just wanted to give a shout out to him.
Thank you for
and
that.
The entire coaching staff.
Thank you for that, because that was part of my next point, was something we mentioned. I don't know if Stevie was on here when we mentioned this. It might have just been me and Dunny, might have been text chain, whatever. One of the things we mentioned looking at this series when we were talking about going into it was Mike Budenholzer, on one hand, never going to adjust. Like, he's going to stick to his guns no matter what.
2 weeks
he's
ago,
going to do. He's going to always do what he does. And Stevie made a great point about how him not switching the defense. They didn't change defensive set, whatever. They didn't do anything different. That's a Budenholzer special right there. And Amari, you just made the great point that I was going to make too, is that, and we talked about 2 weeks ago, is that Ime, all he's shown is that he's adaptable. This team has changed like 6 times throughout the year to morph into what they are now. Like, he was not afraid to tinker with all these things. It also comes to what you mentioned too, Stevie, about Tatum's development. He was never really the playmaker. He didn't really, It wasn't even that it was like he didn't have the passing ability or anything. He wasn't seeing the game like this year, whatever it was, it clicked for him. And he's just, they get slowed down. He's willing to let the game come to him. He's willing not to force up as many, he still has the times, and Dunny, I know that these times still bother you too sometimes. That's why I know it, because he still has the times where he'll fall to the mid-range game. He'll take the contested jumpers, everything. But imagine how much you saw that last year compared to what you're seeing it this year. It's like so few and far between from that. And Amari, you made one more good point. This is my last point before I'll hand it back over to Dunny here. That just a game 6, because I want to talk about how game 6, because it was such, like, game 7 are always fun, but game 6 was the classic of this series with Tatum and Giannis going at it like that. On the Giannis side, on the Bucks side, that was Giannis, like that finally figured out that was like his haymaker. Like he wanted to close out at home, get the extra days of rest, do everything, and he did everything he could because he kind of looked tired in Game 7. I mean, he still put up 25, 20, and 9, which is crazy. 25, 20, and 9, and we're like, oh, Giannis had a bad game. Like he didn't play up to his standard. So what more can you say about it?
When he came off the court, you could just see when it was at the end of the game, Giannis just sitting there. He just looked like, I'm going to sleep for the next 2 weeks. He's going to go hibernate, bro. Yeah. He looked exhausted, and I can't blame him. Like I said, Donnie, I know you were mad at Giannis this entire series, which I get. When you play against him, that's what happens. But Giannis showed that even with not much help at all, he didn't have much help at all this series. He can play, and in my opinion, probably the best team in the NBA right now, 2-7 games, which you got to give him credit for that. I mean, he was a monster all series long.
Amari and I's fellow Kent grad at John Rivers would say right now, Giannis sleeping well. No doubt. Giannis is sleeping, like absolutely. You said, sleeping like a baby tonight. He did everything he could. But Game 6, just to the last point, that was the Tatum game. I think I said that might have been not on this show in text messages. I kept saying to everybody, like, we need the Tatum, like, real takeover game. And I think it was Brett, our buddy that you went yesterday with, Donnie, text me. He's like, well, he's averaging 30 in this series. Like, he's got a couple games with 30, whatever. I'm like, no. But, like, there's another level that you have to hit. Like, averaging 30 in a playoff series is one thing, but you need to be able to go out there and do what he did in Game 6 and just hit the easy shots, but also just hit the tough shots that have no business going in and hit them over and over and over again. There's only certain people that reach that level. And just watching when they put up the score graphic on the bottom and it said Tatum, Giannis, whatever, the 44, 46, it just felt like an all grown up moment. Like the last 5 years, we were watching. Giannis already got there last year. Tatum on his way there. It was a great at checkpoint moment in our NBA history, and with this generation of guys on Game 6, definitely not the last time we're going to see these two go to battle, I don't think.
Yeah.
No, and I do want to touch on the whole, because I did hate Giannis during this series. Like, he was the villain, and it just had to be that way, and that comes with being how good he is. I wouldn't. I didn't really despise Pat Connaughton as much as I hated Giannis because Connaughton wasn't killing us every night.
Question for you then: how would you compare playing Giannis in this series to like a prime LeBron that you've also seen in playoff series, like in a Miami series back then, or even the Cavs a couple years ago? What was like? What's more? What's the difference? Because that's really the level we're talking about now for Giannis at this point, like the performance he was able to put on.
I guess I was scared more of Giannis's dominance just off rip in games because of how fast of an impact he had. I don't know if I ever really saw that. Obviously, LeBron.
No, because Bron does the opposite. Because Bron is like, I'm going to wait and see what you guys are doing for a quarter and a half, and then I'm going to blow up. Yeah. And
Giannis can't really do that without Middleton. And that was kind of one of my points for this series as a whole. The close games that the Bucks didn't win, or when, like Game 7, how it happened was they just really couldn't catch up the entire second half because, of course, no one was helping out Giannis. I mean, the whole rest of the Bucks team played very poorly in the second half. But then you had Giannis missing layups, whether he was forcing them or not, or just exhausted, like we said, because he's carried this team 7 games. And then you have to play in the hostile environment of the TD Garden. But he was missing down the stretch, and then he was just, settling for jumpers, missing those. So that's where I think the biggest difference is. Like LeBron, you had to be worried about him from tip until the very last second because he's also someone that can hit a turnaround 3-pointer, 3 guys on him, and you're still thinking it's going in when it's in the air. And Giannis, he can get there. His jump shot has improved every year. It's slowly, but he's getting there.
He definitely hit some timely threes that were like, oh man, like.
And that was a huge part of the comeback in Game 5. He's definitely not nearly as good at LeBron, but someone who can get there. And something else I wanted to give him credit for is we exhausted the point of how impressive KD at the beginning of last year's playoffs were carrying that Nets team. And I feel like not as many people are talking about Giannis doing that in this year's playoffs. I mean, they're the defending champs.
The same, yeah.
So maybe we're expecting more from them. But, I mean, what Giannis did with the little help that he got, Grayson Allen was non-existent this whole series. other than Brook Lopez at the start of yesterday's game, he had no one. Portis was bad yesterday. Grayson Allen, Connaughton has never been enough.
We talked about it. Drew Holiday shooting 92 shots the first 4 games is never that's just
too
not
many.
Drew Holiday's game. It's just too many.
Too many.
and he's solid too. He's a big reason they won Game 5. The great defensive plays on Smart, but I mean, it showed that they were missing Middleton. My favorite, I guess, 2 of my favorite stats of this series is Pritchard had as many threes as the entire Bucks team yesterday, 4. And if I had to guess, Pritchard, I don't have it in front of me. He probably only played.
I didn't even know if he'd play yesterday. I was gonna say, I was like, I didn't even expect to see him, and he was hitting threes at the end.
And yeah, it's just it's crazy. I guess this isn't a stat, but I did want to touch on this because I believe in it a little bit. I was starting not to believe in it at some point during this series. I'm like, maybe the Bucks are just too good, but the Bucks avoided the Brooklyn Nets. They got cursed by the basketball gods. The Celtics did not. They took them on. They swept them. And then ultimately, this is what happened. We had Game 7 because we didn't avoid the Brooklyn Nets. We took the 2 seed with pride, and then it was in our favor. We had Game 7 at home. And then just one last shout-out to Grant. I mean, it might not mean as much for people who aren't Celtics fans, but this is literally identical to the Kelly Olynyk game in 2017. Game 7 against the Wizards. Kelly had 26 points and 7 threes. Last night, Grant had 27 points and 7 threes.
That's crazy.
So that's wild. Crazy. It's just all lovely for the Celtics right now. Obviously, huge task in front of us with the Heat, but we will get to that.
We will.
And we also had another game last night. It didn't really seem like it. Mavs Suns. Mavs destroyed the Suns on their home court. I want to open this up with Stevie here to talk about Luka, get into it, give us what we need to know about Luka moving forward.
Well, I think I said it in the group chat earlier today. Luka may look friendly. He may look goofy. He may be a fun dude, but he's a bear, and you don't poke a bear. and that's what the Suns did in Game 5. Devin Booker was talking all kinds of crap to him. Devin Booker was knocking the ball out of his hands after the whistle. He when he flopped down to the ground, he's like, "Oh, I pulled a Luka or whatnot." And Luka, after Game 5, he walks out. He goes, "Everybody's acting tough when they're up." And since then, I mean, his stat lines are ridiculous. He had 33, 11, and 8 at their home win, and then 35, 10, and 5 last night, and he didn't even play the fourth quarter. Imagine you get to rest in Game 7 on the road in the fourth quarter. That's what Luka did because of what he did in the first half. He had 27 points. The Suns as a team had 27. And now I know a lot of it was the Suns had their own problems too on offense. They couldn't have played a worse offensive game. I think the Mavs' defensive strategies in Game 6 and 7 actually worked out really, really well. But Luka is the type of player now. He's kind of turned into that guy that where I feel like he's almost unguardable at this point. It didn't matter who the Suns were putting on him. When they had the size with Ayton, he would still hit the step back 3 in his face. He'd go by him. With Chris Paul, he'd just use his big body to back him down. That spin he had on Mikal Bridges last night was just incredible. And those guys, I know Pat Bev was taking dumps on Chris Paul this morning. Chris Paul's still a pretty good defender. Mikal Bridges is a good defender. DeAndre Ayton is a good defender. And Luka didn't matter who is matched up against. Now comes the ultimate test where Luka is going to see Klay Thompson. He's going to see Draymond Green next series. I can't wait for that. But Luka showed against the Suns that even with, not the best team around him. Now, granted, they played very well. Dinwiddie was incredible in Game 7. Everyone talks about how Luka had 27 points in the first half. Dinwiddie had 21. Now, he was a main reason why they blew the Suns out, and it didn't really turn into a contest, because when Luka was off the bench or when Luka was just not really getting the ball too much on offense, but they're doubling him, Dinwiddie was taking over. And that's huge because you saw Jalen Brunson do that earlier in the playoffs. Dorian Finney-Smith had a couple games. Maxi Kleber, one of my favorite guys, comes off the bench, hits 2 or 3 threes. When the first one goes in, I was saying every time, when Maxi Kleber hits the first one, it's going to be a good day for the Mavericks. Because if he hits that first one, he's hitting the next couple, because that's the type of shooter Kleber is. But overall, I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to the role players because, yes, Luka had a ridiculous amount of usage. He was the sole focus. He was the focal point of that offense. But he doesn't have that type of game, and they don't go up by 40 on the Suns if it isn't for Dinwiddie, if it isn't for other guys contributing. And when you have a superstar, in my mind, a generational type talent with Luka Doncic, he just makes it look so easy. you kind of need these guys to step up around you. And the Mavs really did that at the end of the series. So I got to give them a lot of credit. I think they have a bigger test now going into Golden State. That's going to be, I think, just really tough on the side of Golden State. Can probably play Luka one-on-one with Draymond, maybe with Clay a little bit, and we'll see what happens. But against the Suns, no one really counted the Mavs. They didn't expect the Mavs to win the series, let alone take it to 7 games. This was like a Suns in 5. Maybe Dallas wins a couple at home and it goes 6.
Mm-hmm.
But Luka Doncic showed that he can will this team, almost kind of like Giannis was willing the Bucks the past couple seasons against teams that are probably overall better than the team around him. And that's a great sign of things to come for Luka. For Mavs fans, that's a great sign. But it doesn't end here. I think Luka right now, once again, the Mavs and Luka are counted out again against the Warriors. I wouldn't be surprised if they make this a series.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous because they do have a bigger test now, especially with the team that's a lot more experienced than they are, and they've been here multiple times. And so, you know, it is surprising how they beat up on the Suns, but what will it be worth if the role players don't step up in this next series? And for me, I should have known that it would have been over the second that Luka hit his first shot. It was a fader over his right shoulder against DeAndre Ayton by the free throw line. Once I saw that go in, I should have known it was going to be a game. And I think my favorite part about this game was the fact that he was laughing pretty much after every shot that he was hitting, laughing at the players, laughing at the crowd. And he was just so entertaining the entire time. But as you said, those role players stepped up. Dinwiddie had 30. Jalen Brunson had 24. I don't know how those guys are going to be against the Warriors because those guys have obviously Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, they have Jordan Poole, they have Andrew Wiggins. So they have guys that they can throw at other people.
Yes.
And a lot of people, it wasn't a surprise for Luka to perform like this or how he has the entire series. The surprise was the role players in Game 7, especially on the road. So that's why I say I'm a little bit nervous. But I do have Dallas in that series, or I'm rooting for Dallas in that series for obvious reasons. I'm a Cavs fan. I don't want to cheer for Golden State, but yeah, that game was completely surprising. The Suns just looked defeated from the first quarter. Just how fast that got to a double-digit lead, and they didn't fight back from it. I mean, Charles Barkley said at halftime, "You got to come out and change your mentality from the start because this 30-point lead that you're down at a half could be even bigger." And sure enough, at the fourth quarter, I think it was 42 or something like that. So they definitely looked defeated. And Jason Kidd, I'll leave it at this point. Jason Kidd said that a lot of people, they counted them out. A lot of people thought that it was going to be a blowout. And he said, well, it was a blowout. It was just the wrong team.
Yo, Jason Kidd is fire sometimes in the press conferences.
Dude,
against his own players.
Defense on the sideline.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
That's the thing. Shout out the 4 teams remaining. I think somebody sent the stat in. I think it was in a different group chat that the 4 teams remaining, they're all top 4 in defense in the second half of the season or over the whole season. One of those 2 this season. You want to know who number 5 was? The Cleveland Cavaliers. So that's what we're looking at, baby.
It was the Jared Allen injury. It's the Jared Allen injury. He doesn't get hurt. They probably make a deeper run in the playoffs.
Yeah, I want to say this for people that may have been surprised at Dallas. I heard the broadcast. This is something I didn't know. The Phoenix Suns, I believe, were number 1 in wins after the first of the year, but Dallas was number 2.
That's crazy. That's nutty. And it's the same thing as like similar to Boston talking about them too, like just improving on the second half of the year. And, you know, maybe where they ended up in the standings just wasn't indicative of anything because the first half was so bad. They had to climb upwards and everything. And now, I mean, Boston still ended up the 2 seed and was battling for the 1 seed, but that was the East. The West was a little more separate and everything. The Mavs were always considered. It was like Golden State, Phoenix, and then maybe the Grizzlies,
they were the 4th
and then
seed.
they'll drop off. Exactly.
They were the 4th seed, so that shouldn't be discounted at all. I mean, they had home court advantage the entire time. Well, not this time because they were facing against the 1 seed, but to be a top 4, especially top 3, but top 4 in the West, that shouldn't be laughed at.
Not at all. And Amari, so I hate to bring up LeBron for the second time on this podcast when he's not playing, but to speak of this Luka team, this Mavericks team, and Luka himself, and this matchup against the Warriors, it really reminds me of 07 LeBron with that team no one thought that they had the talent to make the finals, and they're facing the Pistons, who are the former champions, who have been there before but weren't there last year. They're trying to get back to where they were, and Luka was just over. Like in that series, LeBron was just good enough, overwhelmingly good enough to get them there, and then they got outmatched in the finals. Whatever. I think Luka, that potential is there for Luka again against this Warriors team. Stevie,
you back off that point really
go
quickly?
for it. Yeah, go for it.
This is gonna be at the expense of the Celtics fan here, but you were talking about LeBron there. Remember, 2018, we were talking about Game 7 against the Celtics. We were talking about Jason Tatum and what he was doing.
That's true.
And sure enough, LeBron, he was trying to feel everybody out until he took over, and he ended it quite literally in the fourth quarter. I think it was about a minute or two left. It was no doubt that the Cavs were going to win at that point. He literally dragged that Cavs team to the finals just like he did in 07.
That's very true. And that game, that game specifically, I saw highlights from it the other day. The Cavs were down like by 20 early. Like it was like a huge lead in that game. I completely forgot. Dunny, I'm sorry for bringing that. I literally forgot. I literally forgot.
Don't apologize. I'm feeling fantastic.
Yeah, you're good. You're back. You're back.
I really can't be brought.
It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the journey.
Because the Celtics are in the Eastern Conference. Some of them LeBron is watching, just like we are.
Exactly.
And that was kind of the birth of Tatum. Like it was like
the dunk still happened. The dunk still happened in that game, regardless of the result.
I have that. I can hang my hat on that.
And I thought that was the moment. Like LeBron, I thought LeBron was gonna like retire. Like they were gonna lose that game, and LeBron was gonna be done. Like if Jason Tatum's dunking on me like this, I can't be out here anymore.
The best stat that I have from the Mavs and Suns series, though, and this is crazy. This is credit Stat News for this on Twitter. Luka in this series, more points than D-Book, more rebounds than DeAndre Ayton, more assists than Chris Paul, and more steals than Mikal Bridges. That is insane, man. And let's not forget that DeAndre Ayton was taken over Luka in the draft, and I love how everyone just has to say that today after how this panned out. But dude, that is insane. Like, I don't know which one of those is the craziest. I kind of, you would expect, I think, the Booker stat, but the Ayton and Chris Paul, and then people get on Luka at the beginning of the series for his bad defense, then he ends with more steals than the guy who was third in the race for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe too much credit for Luka these last couple of days, but also maybe not enough.
I think so. I'm going to pass around the horn. We'll start with Amari and go around here. Just for either of these teams, the Bucks or the Suns, who lost yesterday. For me, the Bucks, I don't think they have to change anything. I think the Middleton injury really changes their trajectory in this postseason. I still think the Celtics can win even if Middleton is playing because it's a different series and everything. There are other moves that the Bucks messed up. Like they traded for Serge Ibaka and got rid of DiVincenzo. Where was Serge Ibaka that whole series? Like he was literally didn't come on the court at all. Yeah. And they needed a wing and they needed a shooter. They needed some kind of shooter that wasn't, when the Lakers were relying on Wesley Matthews last year, everybody was like, this is a terrible roster. They're not ready for it. When the Bucks had Wesley Matthews this year, everybody's like, well, Wesley Matthews, he's a solid wing defender. He's going to help out against Tatum. It's like, no, it's going to end up the same way in this series again. So I think the Bucks getting Middleton back will obviously help them, and having Giannis, they're going to be fine. The Suns, meanwhile, didn't extend DeAndre Ayton last year. That has been the biggest storyline, I think, all year, that a lot of people have touched on it, everything else. They've got a notoriously cheap owner. And there was clearly something, I think Amari or Steve, you mentioned, we were talking about going to this game. They just looked like they didn't even want to be there. Like the energy just wasn't there. Charles mentioning the energy not there. No desperation. Like you could tell within the first 5 minutes that and sometimes you can do this with Game 7 when teams get there and they don't think that they should be in that position, that they just fold. It's usually you've seen teams fold in basketball Game 7s pretty badly, and this was the ultimate folding. Like they just didn't even show up. I would have rather them just been like, hey guys, you know what? You can go on to the next round. But luckily I was I was late to the start of the game, so I turned it on later and I was like, oh, I could just kind of have this on in the background. This shit's done. By halftime, I was it was on the iPad. I wasn't even looking. We had overtimes in hockey. It was great. So there's something deeper wrong with this Suns team is my point. Chris Paul did not look like himself at all in this last series, whatever that was. If it was
Didn't
an
it-
injury that we didn't hear about or whatever.
I
was
think
there
they
something?
just said something about a hamstring, right? Wasn't it a hamstring
Yeah.
injury? I know. I mean,
so
it's
even if he has a
convenient.
hamstring, it's
Quad,
convenient, but it's still a
something like
37-year-old guard breaking down in their biggest
Yes.
series of the year. Even if
Yes.
it's real or not, like it's still a problem for them to have to consider the Ayton situation, whatever. And then the Bridges thing. Bridges, he was supposed to lock down Luka. It was supposed to be Bridges against Luka. He's going to be able to handle him. How'd that work out?
Didn't work out.
Luka didn't seem too afraid of Mikal Bridges at any point in that series. So I think this Suns team has a lot more questions than answers. And we see that from teams that get to the finals and don't win them and come back down to earth. That might have been their chance last year. It really might have. And this team, especially just because of the age of Chris Paul and everything. So Bucks, Suns, what anything else you got for either of these teams, Amari?
Yeah, I think the Bucks, believe it or not, I think they have more questions than the Suns because I think for me, obviously Middleton hurt by not being there, so he'll help by being there next year. But I think for the Bucks, they need a reliable third scorer. They have a scorer in Holiday. Ideally, you may get a couple games of Brook Lopez or DiVincenzo, whoever, but they need a reliable third shooter. And I don't know if that'll be off the bench, someone like Jordan Clarkson. I'm not saying that he'll be available, but someone like him. They need someone else that can kind of take a little bit more pressure off of Giannis and Chris Middleton because we saw how tired Giannis was in Game 7 because it was literally all on him. But for the Suns, I do think that their window is closed. I said it last year because the Warriors were going to get healthy, and we see they're in the Western Conference Finals. Memphis has been a nice surprise. They were the number 2 seed, and obviously John Morant got hurt, and they bowed out to the Warriors. And Dallas was the 4 seed, and now they're facing the Warriors. But coming back next year, or not necessarily this year, I expected them to win 64 games and kind of be in this position again. They look like the best team literally the entire season. But we saw what happened for whatever reason. The Suns just looked defeated. And I even tweeted, I wonder if they said 1, 2, 3 Cancun coming out before half because somehow they got even worse than they were in the first half. In the third quarter, their lead increased. But so I think for them, they'll be fine. I think, they're going to win games. I don't think that they'll win 64 games next year, but they're going to win some regular season games and they'll be in the thick of it next year. Now, it just depends on who they face, how healthy they are, how reliable their scorers are, because, they just disappeared yesterday. Nobody really knows what happened. But I do think you need an answer for a 37-year-old Chris Paul, maybe a reliable backup, not necessarily campaign, whoever that may be.
No.
Maybe
Not reliable.
I think you need more of a shoot first backup point guard, whoever that is. Someone just to kind of increase the offensive. But for them, I don't have as many questions or for the Suns as I do the Bucks.
Stevie, what do you think?
I'm kind of on the other end, just with I still think, I know it's a lot of team basketball now, and these teams have shown with their team defense, but you have to have some type of star power in the NBA if you want to be consistently a championship caliber team year to year, and that's what the Bucks have with Giannis. They are going to find guys around him. It doesn't matter who they are. They're going to keep the same core with Giannis, Middleton, Holiday, and they'll find other guys that they can plug in. I know they didn't play well in these playoffs, but you saw Grayson Allen have his moments this year. Bobby Portis actually had a very good year. Lopez every now and then would pop in and do his thing. With the Suns, they're getting older. Well, these teams in the West are young and getting better. We forget right now the Grizzlies are one of the youngest rosters in the NBA. The Timberwolves right there with one of the youngest rosters in the NBA. You have the Warriors. The Warriors, they have the Splash Brothers, but they also have Jordan Poole, who's turning into a superstar of his own in these playoffs, as well as Kuminga, as well as Wiseman. And then we're forgetting, too, the 2-time MVP, Nikola Jokic, has Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. He did not have them this year. That's a huge difference. You have the Mavs, who are in the Western Conference Finals right now, with Luka and Jalen Brunson.
One more. Kawhi Leonard still has to return for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Exactly. So the West, I think, is a very, very – it's only going to get better next year. It had kind of a down year a little bit this year due to injuries, due to kind of the Lakers having a little bit of dysfunction. You had the injuries in Denver. The West is going to be a lot better next year. And with the Suns, Chris Paul's age isn't going away. He's getting older and he's getting injured more frequently. Devin Booker has to be better in these games, in these clutch moments. But he was 3 of 14, 11 points. I think he had 2 points in the first half. You can't have that. And I do think Devin Booker can be a superstar. Now, Dunny, I know you said something on Twitter. I don't want to ever hear the comparisons between Booker and Tatum again. And I'm with you, Dunny. I'm 100% with you because I think Tatum can do a lot more overall than Booker can. But the Suns need help in that secondary scoring role because Chris Paul doesn't want to be that guy. He showed he can be at times, but he doesn't want to be that guy who's relied on to be their secondary scorer. DeAndre Ayton, there's some nights I look at Ayton and I go, he's a top 3 center in the league. And then there's other nights where it's like, this guy shouldn't start in the league. Bridges is a great role player. He does what he needs to do. He can make open shots. He can drive. He plays great defense. But the Suns really don't have that true secondary scorer, I think, where if Booker's getting double teamed, like what the Mavs did in game 6 and 7, they said, anyone else but Booker, we're taking it out of his hands. We're going to just swarm him. We're going to make someone else step up. And no one did. The Suns need that if they want to compete in the West next year. Now, I'm not saying hit the panic button on the Suns yet. As long as Chris Paul is healthy, it's a great team. Paul, Booker, Ayton, that's a great core. But they were a 64-win team. That was probably their peak. This was probably their peak. The West is getting better. And if they don't make a move or whatnot to get Booker some help on the offensive side of the ball, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's panic time, but I don't think we're going to see the same dominant Suns next year that we did all of this year in the regular season. With the Bucks, I think the Bucks can be back to the Bucks because, like I said, you have Giannis. When you have Giannis, everything else kind of falls into place.
Yeah, so I'm actually agreeing with Amari on this one. I think both teams definitely have some huge things they need to address this offseason.
That is true.
But for me, and me saying this, that doesn't mean that the Bucks could, be better or even in the same spot that they were this season next year. I just think when you're looking at it, like guys like George Hill and Bobby Portis, like I guess more so George Hill, like he's a guy that you have on this team. I think people overrated George Hill.
I know how unreliable George Hill can be.
Yes, that's what I was just gonna say. I'm like, I feel like people thought more of him when he was on the Cavs a few years ago, and like now still think that he's this needle mover. He's really not. I mean, then you're gonna lose a guy like him.
Him getting minutes was when I saw him getting minutes. That's when I was the most confident in the Celtics in this series. I was like, oh, they're getting George Hill run right now. That's where they're going with this. Okay, we're fine.
Bobby Portis is 27, and he said publicly today that he's not going to speak publicly on his future with Milwaukee. He said he loves the organization. I know the organization and the fans love him, but it's not. Yeah, and he deserves it. Frankly, the season he had last year and this year.
He took a nice little pay cut to try to take another run with them this year. He probably could have gotten a nice little deal last year, and he played better this year too.
Yeah,
so he outplayed his contract again. He's probably going to get a bigger deal than he would have last year. So betting on himself worked out. Keep going.
You have Drew Holiday, 31 years old. He's not getting any younger, and then Middleton. I got last 2 seasons with the injuries, a bit concerning. I mean, if he's your second guy and you're really only shot maker in clutch moments, and he's not there, that's super concerning. And then my last point about the Bucks, let's not forget before last season they traded away a bunch of assets, most notably picks. So I think the Suns, even though the position they're in with Ayton and all that controversy, Chris Paul getting up there in age and having to pay him. And then, having to work out some of the role players. I think if need be, if it doesn't work out, maybe a sign and trade with Ayton or just a straight up trade with Ayton. Or even if you do pay him, he's young enough and talented enough where, he's going to get better. You do have the young superstar in Booker. Although I don't believe he's on Tatum's level, he's very young and he's right there. And then, I think you get another season out of Chris Paul and you can address
That's such
the
a
point
crazy
guard.
thing to say. I just heard you say that, and I feel like a year or two ago I would have disagreed with you, but I feel like
and now you can't even question it.
Which to me
I back on it.
Because I think Devin Booker, he's definitely at least made a top 20 NBA player. I mean, he's definitely their number one, and we've seen how good he can be offensively, even earlier in his career when the Suns were terrible. And sure, the Suns have been terrible, and so this is only his second career playoff appearance. But we've seen Jason Tatum, even back in 2018, take it to LeBron, even though he lost. You had no question about his offensive prowess, and now he's even better with his defense.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but I agree with you now.
Tatum is. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that's not something that, I was saying it for, late parts of this season, but I never have been able to say it with the confidence that I can now after the first two playoff series that we saw from Tatum. I think between the Nets and the Bucks series, that solidified it for me. Booker's also, it's up in the air for him to pass Tatum at another point too. I mean, just right now, Tatum is for sure, in my opinion, the better player. And Luka proved last night that he's also, the better player than Booker right now. No hate on Booker. He's fantastic. He dropped 70 on the Celtics before. I know all about Devin Booker and what he was doing when he was a young buck as well. But yeah, both fantastic players. I got to give the edge to Tatum right now.
Yeah, man. They're shortlist guys, and you think of like the top of the league and everything, and Tatum is making his case now to be on that short list and still making it as we go on here. So let's get into the conference finals. We'll give a little bit of our thoughts going into it. It's hard to preview a conference finals, like that's why I love doing after the game ones. We've done that on this podcast so many times because the game ones you just get to see everything in front of you, but that's not how the world works sometimes. So Amari, we're gonna start with you here. We will start with Mavs Warriors because Dunny, then we'll just start with you for Celtics Heat on the other end on that side.
Sure.
So Mavs Warriors game 1 Wednesday night, 9 p.m. TNT. All these later starts now. You East Coast fellas gonna have to be up late. I at least get the hour early, but bro, I fell asleep at like 10 o'clock last night. Like I didn't see the Flames overtime even. I'm old man as it is too. So 9 o'clock start, 8 Central, Mavs Warriors. What are your first thoughts going into this series? Just take it whatever direction you want to go, Amari.
For me, it'll be the Warriors' defense on Luka. I think they'll force their hand to get the ball out of Luka's hands and force those role players to kind of do what they did in Game 7. And to me, it'll be up to them. It's kind of cliche, your role players need your role players and stuff in the playoffs. But for Dallas, I think that really holds true for them because we've seen how it's been so far. But they'll make Dinwiddie and Jalen Brunson, his name keeps disappearing out of my head, but they'll keep making them try to, be the aid that Luka needs. And so for me, it'll just be whether they step up or not. We know role players play better at home. They don't have home court advantage, obviously. So it'll just be up to them. Luka, to me, it'll just be efficiency. We know he can jack up the shots. We know he'll make shots. But to me, I felt like even yesterday in Game 7, they started to take unnecessary shots. And for me, it'll be eliminating those unnecessary shots to maximize your possessions. You don't want to shoot something with 15 seconds left in the shot clock, 35-foot three-pointer just because you think you're open. Try to play team ball because the Warriors are, if not the ultimate team playing team, they're definitely one of them. So for me, it'll definitely be defense on Luka and those role players.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest matchup here is what the Warriors are going to do against Luka, and I think they can put two guys on him one-on-one and feel confident with Clay against Luka and then Draymond versus Luka, and I think that's going to be the big one, Draymond against Luka. And then on the other side, I think it's going to be that the Mavs could probably match up with the Warriors when they want to play small ball. When the Warriors go with their small lineup of Poole, Curry, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond, a lot of teams don't really have those stretch forwards that can play. The defense can't play that. The Mavs kind of do. Dorian Finney-Smith can be that type of player. Reggie Bullock is pretty good at what he needs to do, and I think the Mavs will be able to play small and play fast with the Warriors. But as you saw with the Mavs, and especially in the Sun series, they don't really want to play fast. Even though they have a lot of guys that can, they like to play a slow, more methodical kind of pace and run the offense through Luka. And I think this kind of comes down to two key players. You pointed it out, Amari. First one is Jalen Brunson. Luka is going to get the sole focus. Jalen Brunson has shown he can be a guy who can step up. He stepped up with Luka out in those first couple games against Utah. He stepped up at the end of this season. Jalen Brunson is not going to have the best Warriors defenders on him. And the Warriors are a good team overall in terms of defense, but Brunson's going to be the one who can get a lot of those opportunities. And then coming off the bench, the Warriors don't have to start Poole. They're not going to start Poole if the rest of their team is healthy. It's going to be Poole against Dinwiddie coming off the bench when some of those starters need rest, or maybe a guy gets into foul trouble. Dinwiddie played fantastic at the end of the Sun series, but he struggled a little bit at the beginning of the playoffs. He struggled a little bit at the beginning of that series. Dinwiddie cannot have bad games against this Warriors team because they need that extra guard depth too to match up with the Warriors' big three of guards with Poole, Curry, and Thompson. The Mavs, if Luka can get his and Brunson can be what Brunson was when Luka was out, they can kind of match up a little bit there. And it's not as big of star power, but with Luka, Brunson, and Dinwiddie, I'm very excited to see if they play those three guards to match up when the Warriors play Curry, Thompson, and Poole all at the same time. And I think the Mavs will do that to a point.
Yeah, really quick, I'm glad that you brought up Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith, because to me, I feel like almost it'll be more important for them to step up, is because you know what Luka and you know what Jalen will do. And even if they do their jobs, they'll still be outnumbered by the Warriors just because they have so many people that can get their bucket whenever they want to and wherever. And so for me, it'll be up to them because they have the athleticism to at least try to get to the rim, especially when the Warriors play their small ball. So it'll be about taking advantage of those matchups, especially knowing that they won't have the Warriors' best defenders on them. And so make your open shots. If not, try to get to the rim. Even if you try to get somebody in foul trouble, you can flip the switch and have the momentum, even in a game one on the road, to try to steal the win and take back home court advantage, and then do what you do on the road, knowing that Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic will do what they do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also, too, if they're able to hit a couple shots early on, it's going to force the Warriors, who are a more undersized team, to play out on the arc. And that's going to help the Mavs drive into the paint more often, get more looks, even if they play a big guy like Powell or Kleber. I know Kleber's more of a shooter than playing down low, but it's at least going to force the Warriors to kind of guard them outside the arc. I think Dorian Finney-Smith and Bullock are two guys that if they can hit a couple shots early on, it's going to change how that entire game goes.
What do you got on the series, Jake?
I couldn't agree more about what you're talking about with defending Luka. Stevie, you got more confidence in Klay Thompson than I do to defend Luka. Even more confidence than Draymond that I have one-on-one. I don't think they have literally anybody to touch Luka on this roster.
Really?
Even Wiggins, whatever. I just think what we saw from them defending. Just defending in general, I think some of that in that series against the Grizz, it's going to be a huge test for Luka, obviously, because we know that the Warriors are a very smart defensive game planning team. Like, they're going to throw everything at him. They're going to throw every challenge at him. It's kind of like what the Bucks did with Tatum that we were just talking about, that he passed all these tests. He really had to answer a lot of different like they threw a lot of different things at him and he answered all of it. This is going to be the biggest like mental grind of Luka's career, playing the Warriors, into how they attack him defensively and how they attack him defensively, because they're going to target him a lot. And put him in a lot of their actions. Like you were talking about, Amari, this team, like the Warriors are the ultimate team offense. They're going to be running around like crazy. I think the big thing defensively for the Mavs is they're going to try to deny the ball from Curry a lot. I think that they'd rather have Poole beat you than Klay, just because Poole is the better athlete at this point. And like you said, with that bench unit, or what am I saying? Not Klay beat you than Poole. I'm saying you'd rather have Klay beat you than Poole, because Poole is the better athlete. He's going to be the one coming off the bench. They're going to need a game plan more for him scoring. If Klay's going off, then Klay's going off, man. Like, that's the point in his career. Like, you're not gonna leave him, obviously, but he's not gonna do as much damage off the ball and off the dribble, I should say, than Steph and Poole are gonna do. So the defenses are really interesting because they're two obviously incredible defensive teams. As we said, all four of these teams left are incredible defensive teams. These are probably going to be lower scoring matchups all the way throughout the playoffs between all these teams. I'm very interested to see what the Warriors deploy against Luka, because I don't know if they have the personnel as much. And especially like when you said they go with that small lineup, that's just playing right into what Dallas wants to do. Yeah. Like Dallas, the way the Warriors play is exactly what Dallas is going to want them to do, which is not what it was the case against the Suns, which is what made last night so surprising, that they were just able to torch them like that because we hadn't seen it. But that being said, the Mavs have never seen anything like Steph Curry in the Western Conference Finals, and the fear and terror that they can put into your hearts and everything, and the way that they played on the road besides last night. going into Chase Center, I mean, it's going to be a really tough ask for them to steal a game. So that's where I don't know, just seeing the trouble they had with the Suns besides Game 7, which as much as that was how well the Mavs played, it felt like more of a Suns story. We talked way more about the Suns in that game than we did anything else. I don't think the Warriors are going to have a mental slip up like that. So can the Mavs stay strong throughout this series? Because it's going to be a challenging series no matter what. I think if the Mavs were to win this series, it would have to be in 7 games. I don't think they're taking 1 or 2 games off the Warriors on the road like that. So yeah, it's just going to be a grind for me. Dunny, you give your thoughts on this, and then we'll kick it off for the Celtics Heat.
Yeah, I think to me, the reason I'm most excited about this series is, I think a lot of the things you guys talked about are important and definitely things to watch. But the season series, the Mavs won at 3-1. But, Jake put here, or one of you guys, actually don't know if it was Jake, put here in the notes that no Draymond and Clay for most of / all of those matchups. Yeah. And a few of those matchups came before the Mavs kind of revamped their team and completely changed their identity after the trade deadline. Bringing in Bertans, bringing in Dinwiddie, who we haven't even really mentioned. Dinwiddie was a savior last night as much as Luka was in that Game 7, and they picked him up halfway through the season. So credit to Mark Cuban and the Mavs for that.
Think of what getting rid of Porzingis has done for this team. Like that's anything. Like the addition of subtraction by a guy that was supposed to be their second star is crazy.
Porzingis is just playing 2K on his couch in Washington. But yeah, man, the part of the biggest excitement for me and with this series moving forward is I really don't know what to expect. A lot of the season series that we saw, it means nothing to me. Quite frankly, this Mavs team is completely different, and it seems like the Warriors kind of keep leveling up as they got healthy throughout the season, and now we had this emergence of Jordan Poole in the playoffs as well. I think this is just going to be one hell of a series. Yeah,
it really is.
It's an embarrassment of riches that this man has turned into what he is.
Yes.
I know Stevie mentioned it earlier too, but like they have guys like Kuminga and Wiggins isn't at the age that the Splash Brothers are at too, so he's still considered a young buck in my book.
Yeah, bro. Wiggins is barely. He's like 26. Like I feel like he's like 35, but he got drafted in 2014. Like it's really not that long ago, but it just feels like forever. Oh my gosh.
The guys that I'm looking out for in this series, though, I think I'm giving it to the Warriors the edge going into this series, but I think guys like Maxi Kleber and Bertans are going to have need to have a huge games in this series, because I think that's something that the Warriors may struggle with, having to pay a ton of attention to Luka. I think they might lose some of those other guys on the 3-point line. I know Amari brought up Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith as well. So I just think shooters around Luka need to be available for him. Luka's assist numbers need to be high in this series, and I think it will make for a great series.
I agree. So do you want to kick off here? You want me to go? I can start and then go to you, give you a second here. I'll let you guys go more on this, because you talked about we don't know what's going to happen in that Mavs Warriors series. I really don't know what's going to happen here. These two teams are going to have every answer defensively. Mari, you talked about how great of a coach Ime Udoka is, and that is definitely true. He's going to make adjustments. You know who is the best coach at adjustments in the NBA, though? It's Eric Spoelstra. Yeah. That man literally has an answer to every equation. So the chess match in this series feels like it's going to, you want to talk about old school Eastern Conference Finals? We're going to have like an 81-75 game in this series. There's no doubt in my mind.
And I love every minute of it.
I'm going to love it. Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to watch 34%. These kids need to be humbled and learn what actual defense is and everything, because I think that this is going to be a physical series. I think that as much as the matchup that really interests me, and Donnie, I'll kick it off to you here, because I want to know your confidence level in this, is Jimmy Butler against most likely Jason Tatum, but either of them. That's the big matchup to me. And Bam's going to have a lot of that responsibility as well. But the thing about the Celtics going into this series now, they're the biggest team left. They're not going to play big. They don't really want to. But Robert Williams is the biggest starter left of all the teams left. If they play them with Horford at the same time, it's the dual big lineup against all these teams who would rather be small. Like the Heat are going to play small. PJ Tucker's going to play center sometimes. Like they're going to be incredibly small this whole series. The Mavs and Warriors, obviously.
They got to worry about Robert Tice, too, out at the three-point because they all, not Robert Williams, but him and Al Horford can step out and shoot the 3 too. So even if Bam Adebayo will be facing them, he's going to have to worry about covering literally from the three-point line to the paint.
The thing is, and he is, but that's the one man that can do it too. Like I've seen Bam literally run from the line. So that's the interesting part of the matchup to me is just the adaptability in the lineups that the Celtics can do, but just the answers that the Heat kind of have, but specifically with the Jimmy matchup and the Bam matchup against your guys, how confident are you feeling?
Today, just going into, coming off of last night and just taking the series for what it is right now. I know Lowry's already been ruled out for game 1. Smart questionable for tomorrow, so that could be a wash. So I kind of just have to look at this series for what it is right now, although I think there will be some moving parts as far as injuries go. My confidence level is 7 out of 10 right now. I feel pretty good. The Celtics held the Miami Heat to 78 points at one point in this season, their lowest point total. It seems like if a team had a lowest point total this season, it seemed like it came because of the Celtics. I think we match up great with this team. Something that the Heat have been very good at, and especially in these playoffs, is having big nights from guys like Victor Oladipo, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and usually because they play very well on the three-point line and they hit their open shots. And you mentioned a guy like Robert Williams. He will be healthy for this series. No setbacks for him after the knee bruise last series against the Bucks. Guys like Strus, Vincent, Oladipo, Duncan Robinson, if they get him some run in this series, Robert Williams will be on those guys in the perimeter. I know a lot of people don't really consider Rob a perimeter defender. I probably watched 80 of the 82 games in the regular season for the Celtics, and I've watched every playoff game probably twice.
Everybody tries
since these playoffs have started. So I think people don't understand Robert Williams is a perimeter defender. He plays on guards a lot of the time when he starts games opposed to a big. So I think that just alone puts us in a good spot going into this. You mentioned Jimmy Butler. He scares me the most by far on this Heat team. But I think if you give him a steady diet of Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, he's going to be looking just as exhausted as Giannis was last series. I'm not guaranteeing a win for the series or anything, but I am feeling pretty confident going into this matchup. If we can steal one of the first 2 games in Miami, which the green teamers, they travel to Miami. There's a lot of Celtics fans in Florida. I think people will be surprised on Tuesday night to how many Celtics jerseys we see in the Miami crowd. But yeah, I think stealing one of these first 2 games will be huge for the Celtics.
Yeah, I think these are 2 very similar teams. I think the Heat, I've been saying this probably for the past couple of months, they're the most slept-on team in the NBA, probably most disrespected team. No one really talked about them as a potential championship contender, and they were the 1 seed in the East for the reason. They have home court advantage for a reason. They probably have the deepest roster, the deepest rotation of any of the 4 remaining teams, and I think that's probably going to help them. Because, like Dunny said, there are so many guys that can step up and have a big game. You have Strus, you have Hero, you have Oladipo, and these are guys that are coming off the bench that can help. And so I think on the other end of it, I think the Celtics probably need some help from their guys contributing off the bench. And it may be Grant Williams, who probably will move more to a bench role if Robert Williams starts and they do start Allen Williams together. It could be guys like Peyton Pritchard, even Derek White. I think Derek White may have to have a good series if the Celtics, want to win this.
He's
but I also
shoot
think,
a little bit, yeah.
I think he has to be a little more confident. Just he's a good player. He was a good player on the Spurs. He was a good player when he first got to Boston. I think he's just got to have a little more confidence because the Heat are going to rotate in 8-9 guys. Maybe they give Duncan some more run too. I think the Celtics may have to match that a little bit, or it may get very tiring for their stars, Tatum and Brown, because the Heat have a great defense and they have a very aggressive physical defense that I think will tire out your superstars if you can't get other guys some work in this game and in the series. But overall, man, like I said, I think the second half of the year, it's been clear who the best team in the NBA has been, and it's been the Celtics. I think a lot of it is because of their team defense. I think a lot of it is because guys have stepped up. And like I said, Jason Tatum has turned into not just a scorer anymore, but a true superstar. I think this series goes 6, probably 7 games. I'm hoping it goes 7, and maybe another Celtics in 7 for me, Dunny. We'll see. But I think these are two teams that are so evenly matched, that are so good on team defense, that shout out to all the casual NBA fans that are like, oh, they don't play defense anymore. We've got 4 of the best defensive teams in the second half of the season in the Final Four right now in the conference championships. And you're going to watch this Celtics Heat series. It is going to be a physical defensive series. Yes, you have guys who can score and get their buckets when they want, but overall, these are 2 of the best team defenses we've seen in a while in the NBA. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I think everyone's probably still sleeping on the Heat because they have been all year long. But I think the Heat are going to give the Celtics a war. I think this is going to be a war of a series. And I think it's going to be Celtics in 7, but I'm not like 100% confident on that right now. I want to see how game 1 plays out, Chick. I know, like you said, it's a lot easier after seeing the first game, but I want to see how game 1 plays out before I think, because I think these teams on paper are very, very even.
Yeah, unfortunately, I went last, so you guys touched on a little bit of points that I was going to say. But I do think of the 2 series, this will be the deepest in terms of roster depth. Because for the Heat, when it'll literally be a game of chess. So when are you going to reach for Victor Oladipo? When are you going to reach for obviously Tyler Hero will get the most minutes? Or when are you going to reach for Strus? Are we going to see Duncan Robinson with Kyle Lowry out? Are you going to reach for Martin? So you never know. And I often forget about Derek White off the bench because he just got traded there during the season. But it is a very evenly matched series. I do think it'll go 7. I'm hoping it'll go 7. I don't really know right now which team will win, but to me, it'll be based off of those rotations because both defenses are really good, as we've obviously stressed the entire time. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Tatum has an off night or Brown has an off night or somebody else is forced to kind of step up in that role. In the last years, we didn't really see Duncan Robinson all that much until he popped up in game 5 or 7. So to me, it'll be all about rotations. Both teams are really deep. How far are you willing to reach to kind of get your offense going, or even defense? Do you want to try to get your offense going at expensive defense? Because we all know how the starters are going to play over the role players. So, like I said, it'll go 7. I'm not really sure who's going to win. I think this one will be the most entertaining of the 2. It's obviously the deepest of the 2. And I can't wait for game 1. So.
Well, one thing we got here, and great points for all of you guys there. One thing we have here with the Celtics Heat, why I think I'm more excited about this series as well, is that we got history. Like this makes me nostalgic for some great Celtics Heat series we've had in the past. ESPN put it out earlier. I think of the last 15 Eastern Conference Finals, the Heat have been in 8 and the Celtics have been in 7. So these are literally the 2 teams of our generation, like without realizing it in the East. Like it's these 2 teams that have just been the constant. So just the history there, like seeing those 2 jerseys on the floor in these types of games is going to be great. One point I think that I'm interested to see from the Celtics wise offensively, and with like obviously this defense, the perimeter defense on the Heat is incredible, but they don't have the size that the Bucks did, and the Celtics want to attack the paint. Like Ime in every single coach interview, I think during the series was like, we need to get into the paint more, because they couldn't do it against the Bucks because the Bucks are just humongous, especially when they have Giannis, Portis, and Lopez on the floor at the same time. Like that's just, you're not going into those trees if you don't need to. The Heat are not going to present that trouble, even with as strong of a defense as they still are. Just the size and Tatum and Brown being able to finish oversized inside and everything, they're going to have an easier time in theory, because Bam Adebayo is a freak who will block shots that should not be, a human shouldn't be able to reach, and everything like that. Like those moments are going to happen. But yeah, the block in the bubble was a moment. Sorry, Dunny, to bring up another torturous Celtics. We were talking about it earlier, and I'm like, yeah, that's like one of the only memories distinct basically from the bubble that I can do is that block because it was just.
Can I touch on the bubble really quickly? This is one point that I forgot to
Yes.
make, but this will sound like I'm making the case for the Heat, but the Heat are also another very team-oriented offense because we've seen them get to the finals with Jimmy Butler scoring like 15 or 18 points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you just don't know how it's going to go, and obviously that was before Kyle Lowry got there. So you just don't know who's going to be the leading scorer. Like we said, it'll be a low-scoring series, and the leading scorer will have like 20 points. So you just don't know. So like I said, I'm excited for either one. I hope it goes 7, but I just wanted to make that point because I forgot to say it. So.
No, that's a great point. And another thing about Lowry and Smart both banged up, both teams' point guards. We don't know what we're going to get. Smart obviously is expected for game 1, I believe, tomorrow still. But new foot sprain from that fall yesterday. He's got his thigh contusion. He's been dealing with, like, the man is held together by glue. And Kyle Lowry with his hamstring issue, I believe, right? It's something like that. It's an issue that is not going to go away. It's just going to be when he can actually return to the
He's
floor.
already ruled out.
He's already ruled out for the whole series?
No, for just
for game one. Oh, okay. I was
Game
gonna
one,
say, I was like, damn. All right. Yeah, I knew game 1, and that makes sense. I honestly kind of expected that. I was surprised to see that they were gonna play Smart tomorrow because I kind of figured both teams would go with the more conservative route for the game 1. But the health as it affected in the last series with Middleton and potentially, I guess, Chris Paul was affected by a hamstring injury as well. That's gonna play a big role, especially with those two guards who matter so much offensively, but especially defensively. Those two guys, that's what you think of first for point guard wise. So excited. I got Celtics in 6 and Warriors in 6 for reference for both series, by the way. No game 7s this time around for me.
I will say I'll be happy with any combination of the NBA Finals. I know, Donnie, you're pulling for Boston, but I would love to see Luke in the finals, but I will be fine if it's Warriors, Celtics, Warriors, Heat, Celtics. It does not matter. I'm happy with any combination.
Or Heat. Imagine if it's Heat Mavs for the 3rd time with almost different teams. Like,
yeah, right.
Like that's so weird.
Yeah, you don't even think about that. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But I think the Warriors. I think the Warriors are probably going to be too much for the Mavs, as much as I hate saying that. And then I think it's Celtics over the Heat in 7 in Miami. But, well, like I said, any combination, I'm cool with it. I'm excited to watch these series. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think I'm going Warriors in 7 and Celtics in 6. I think just to make one last point, I like that Amari brought up the bubble because I feel like that's all I've been hearing about, kind of leading up to this Heat Celtics series. And where this might sound like it's a dig at the Heat, it's really not. I'm just making a point for both teams, I guess. People were like, oh, it was Heat in 6 in the bubble. It was easy that time around. I mean, obviously this is stuff I'm seeing from Heat fans, but I just want to say for both teams, I mean, that Jaylen Brown was 23. Jason Tatum was 22 in that series. There was no Al Horford. Grant Williams and Robert Williams barely played in that series, which is scary. It's like we were relying on Daniel Tice.
It was Cantor. It was so much Cantor, bro.
It was Cantor.
So much Cantor, which is why they lost. Like that is you see him on the roster. Okay, I got it.
And I'll give my props to Miami as well. They you think about that series, you think about Goran Dragic. Barring that he's healthy, Kyle Lowry is a huge upgrade from Goran Dragic. They have guys like Victor Oladipo and Max Strus now who have been brilliant for them when they're starting or off the bench. They had Duncan and Tyler then, but they have a lot more shooters. They have PJ Tucker now. So both teams are completely different. So I think, and of course, that was in the bubble with no fans. So I think to even try to draw any comparisons to that bubble series,
it's hard,
maybe other than the fact that it's Butler and Bam and Brown and Tatum again, but I really think it's going to look completely different. Defenses are way better for both teams this time around. And I think the biggest thing that I mentioned right there is that the Celtics have Al Horford and how well he's been playing in this playoff. So that's why I got season 6 this time around.
All right, Mari, you got to give a prediction that we all gave one. I don't know if you're ready for it because I know you did say twice. I don't know who's gonna win the series.
Yeah, for the East, I hate to sound like I'm hedging my bets, but it's a toss up. But I have it going 7. I really don't know who's gonna win at this point. Maybe we'll come back after game 1 and I can give a prediction. But for now, I will say it'll go 7. For the West, I'll say Warriors in 6. I'm hoping Dallas in 7, but I got Warriors in 6.
Yeah, I said the NBA if you're looking for ref things, which is one of my favorite things to do, the NBA is going to want Celtics Warriors in the finals. NBA 75 season. It's the best finals they could ask for besides Lakers Celtics. Like from a TV perspective, casual fan perspective, you have literally the most iconic franchise in the Boston Celtics, all the titles, all those things, the original titles, and the modern dynasty, and who's trying to get back up there, the Warriors. It'd probably break TV records, all kinds of them. The league is going to be going for that all the way. This is going to be great finals, like you said, no matter what. But I'm just being wary of when we see some crazy shit going on in this Warriors Mavs series. That's really the one.
We need to clip that for when we get some bogus referee calls when they want to be the star of the game.
You're right. That's a good idea because the Celtics Heat is just going to be physical. They're just going to beat the shit out of each other. So that, who knows? But this Warriors Mavs series, there's going to be some stuff like off ball fouls on like Finney Smith early that are like, what? Like, is that really? I'm telling you, that's what we're looking at. But hey, conference finals, it's my favorite time of the year. Like, I love the NBA finals, obviously the theater, everything else. But when you get to the conference finals and it's just one after another, you just know, like, one day after another, game after game after game. There's no 2-day breaks. They're just going to go all the way through. And every night we just get high level, intense basketball. What more could you ask for? So thank you all for joining this conference finals preview. For Donovan Holden, for some guy I didn't see, for Amari McPherson, this is Jake Micah. Follow us at Happy Hour Hoops On. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you all. Have a great week. Enjoy the basketball starting tomorrow, 8:30.